Let me speak directly to my Afro-Caribbean people for a minute. Have you ever wondered why so many of us feel disconnected, unsure of who we are, or constantly fighting for validation in systems that were never built for us? What if that feeling has nothing to do with sin, failure, or lack of faith, and everything to do with colonization? Because when something powerful is unplugged from its original source, it doesn't stop being powerful, it just stops running at full capacity, and that's exactly what's happened to us. Keep listening, because I'm about to break this down with examples that'll make you see it clearly. Think of it like this: when something is disconnected from its original source, it might still function for a while, but never at full power. Take a mobile phone. You can have the latest model, full of potential, but once it's disconnected from the charger, it's on borrowed time. Eventually, no matter how advanced it is, it shuts down. That's what's happened to us. We're the latest model of our ancestors, built strong, designed for greatness, but disconnected from the original power source that once charged our spirit. Or imagine a plant uprooted from its native soil. You can replant it somewhere else, but if the soil chemistry is wrong, if it doesn't recognize the minerals, the climate, the rhythm of rain, it will struggle. It might grow, but weakly. Its color fades, its roots shallow. That's what colonization did to us. It replanted us in a soil that doesn't nourish who we are at the core. Same with a computer running someone else's software. You can install updates, but if it's not built for that system, it slows down, glitches, freezes. That's our mind under the colonial program, running beliefs and fears written by someone else, while our original code lies buried deep underneath. So when you see Afro-Caribbean people who doubt themselves, who walk heavy with insecurity, or search for validation in systems that don't value them, that's not a curse. That's what happens when you unplug a generation from its native current. You can't expect a light to shine when it's not connected to the grid it was designed for. And that's why reconnecting isn't about rejecting the West. It's about remembering where our power comes from. It's about plugging back into that ancestral socket, our rhythm, intuition, resilience, and spiritual intelligence. The energy that once made us self-sustaining, fearless, and free. Because when you reconnect to that source, you stop begging for light, you become it.
Take a second to process that.
What if the real disconnection happened long before we were even born? What if the reason so many of us feel spiritually lost, unsure of who we are or what our true power is, has nothing to do with sin and everything to do with colonization? Think about it. Before Europeans landed on African soil with Bibles in their hands and flags in their pockets, our ancestors already had systems of belief, rituals, and a deep spiritual understanding of life, nature, and the unseen. They honored energy, ancestry, balance, and reciprocity. They didn't need to be told where God was, because they understood God lived through them, through the land, through their lineage. Then came colonization, and with it came a campaign, not just to take land and labor, but to take belief. Because once you replace a people's God, you control their mind. You make them fear their own spiritual traditions. You make them ashamed of the very source that once gave them power. Now, people will argue Christianity existed in Africa before colonization. And that's true, in parts of North and East Africa, long before the slave ships. But that's not the full story, because European colonizers didn't bring faith, they brought their version of faith, one tied to empire, submission, and obedience. They used the Bible as a passport for power, and millions of Africans who had their own rich, divine, spiritual heritage were forced or manipulated into abandoning it. So here's the real question. What if that spiritual break created a wound that's never healed? What if the greatness that sleeps inside us, our creativity, our intuition, our rhythm, our resilience, has been dimmed because we've been disconnected from the original practices that once taught us how to activate it? It's not about rejecting Christianity. It's about questioning who taught it to us and why. Because if your faith was delivered through the hand of your oppressor, at what point do you start asking if the message was for your freedom or your control? Imagine if reconnecting with our ancestral belief systems, not to worship idols, but to realign with our original frequency could reawaken that spark in us. The confidence, the creativity, the spiritual awareness that once defined who we were before the colonizer told us who to be. So when I ask, what if we've been disconnected? I'm not asking you to abandon your religion. I'm asking you to remember yourself. Because power doesn't come from praying harder to a foreign god. It comes from knowing who you are, where you came from, and what already lives within you. That's the conversation we need to start having. So if everything I've just said hits home, or makes you question what you've been taught to believe about your own power, don't scroll off yet. Because in part 2, I'm breaking down the real signs that show when a person's been disconnected from their roots, and how to start reconnecting to that original source of power that's been buried inside us all along. When an Afro-Caribbean person is disconnected from their ancestral roots, something deep inside goes silent. It's not just cultural, it's spiritual. The disconnect isn't about forgetting history. It's about losing access to a source of inner power that once gave us direction, balance, and identity.